Hey there, and welcome back to the Lifestyle School podcast. I am Hope, your guide to sustainable weight loss, metabolic health, and finally creating a lifestyle that actually works for you in real life. Today's episode is all about, quote, the perfect diet. And I want to start by telling you the truth up front. This is a multi-layered topic. Honestly, it could be easily a 2 hour deep dive. There are so many angles we could explore here: different diets, cultural influences, food access, gut health, psychology, metabolism, and more. But I'm not going to do that to you today. What I am going to do is offer you a clear, practical, and thoughtful approach to understanding what the quote perfect diet is, what that really means, not in theory, not according to, some influencer on Instagram, but what it looks like in real life for you. Because the truth is, if you can understand these 5 key principles I'm going to walk you through, you're going to be equipped to stop the confusion and start building something that can actually serve you and really serve your body and help you get to your goals. So, before we get into it, though, I just want to remind you I am not a medical doctor and this is not medical advice. Um, this podcast is for educational purposes only. And before you make any major dietary or lifestyle changes, you need to make sure that you talk to a qualified healthcare professional about your individual needs. So, with that, let's dive into it. So, step one, when it comes to the perfect diet, is we have to start with the most important truth, and it is this: there is no one size fits all diet. And I'm going to say that again because it bears repeating. There is no one size fits all diet or diet approach. Okay. I think that phrase gets thrown around a lot, but I need you to really hear it. There's no universal plan. There is no magical macro ratio or calorie amount. There's no diet that works for everyone all the time. And if someone tries to tell you that keto is the only way, or that everyone should be vegan, or that carnivore is the ultimate solution, I want you to pause, take a deep breath, and then I want you to turn around and run the other direction. This may mean you need to unfollow some people on social media if you can't take everything someone is saying with a grain of salt, even me, right? Because there's only one you and one body that you live in. So I want you to think of it that mindset is an immediate red flag. I want you to know that, saying that there's one way for everyone is a gross oversimplification that completely ignores how complex and brilliant your body actually is, and it disregards your personal context. And this is really important. It doesn't take into account your genetics, your health history, your lifestyle, your hormone status, your sleep, your stress, your gut health. It ignores your season of life, which is huge. Whether, you're postpartum, maybe you're perimenopausal, maybe you're recovering from burnout, or maybe you're training for a marathon or a powerlifting competition, right? This is all super, super important. And when we fall into that trap of thinking there is one perfect diet because someone is really convincing on the internet, we often end up ignoring our own body's signals in an effort to, do the right thing. I'm making air quotes with my hands right now because I get really fired up about this topic. And that's where damage really happens. If you've listened to me, any of my, previous 27 podcasts, I'm really big about you stopping and listening to your body. What is your body trying to tell you? We got to tune back into how we're actually feeling. We got to get out of autopilot when it comes to, our eating, to our habits, to our lifestyle. Because, when you start to ignore your own body signals to do what someone else is, selling you as, the perfect plan, you hand over your authority to someone else's rules. And in that, you definitely lose some agency. And the truth is, there's no perfect diet, and anyone trying to sell you one probably isn't interested in your long-term health. What they're interested in is your click, maybe your purchase, or maybe blind loyalty. And I want to also make this clear. The social media game, I'm not very good at the social media game. I really honestly don't like social media. If I didn't have an online business, I think at this point in my life, I would just delete it entirely. But unfortunately, I have to kind of be there for this. But extremes really thrive on things like Instagram or TikTok. And the more extreme, the more like flagrant you can say something, the more likely you are to get people to respond to your post. Let's just be real. And that, though, when it comes to health and nutrition, is essentially the exact opposite of what we want. So we have to just let that go. Okay. And I want to encourage you, maybe this means you need to rethink some of the people you're following on the internet. If you're constantly feeling confused about what you should do, and you feel like, oh, well, maybe I tried that and it didn't work, but this person keeps yelling at you to say, do this. The perfect example of this, and it's not specifically the perfect diet, but I think when we get into like the calorie counting camp, I can't tell you how many people I see on the internet just saying, when people are like, oh, well, I ate 1,300 calories, I was starving and I'm not losing any weight. They're like, well, you're actually just not counting those calories enough. You're not actually being honest about your calorie counting. You're probably underreporting or blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, no, no. Let's just like let all of that go. And let's figure out what is the perfect diet. And it's a layered approach. So let's get to step 2. And if you take nothing away from this next segment, I want you just to like keep this simple phrase, and that is you have to start with real food. Okay, period. It's that simple. You have to start with real food. So there is no single perfect diet, but where do you start, right? And that's where I meet people at. They're like, well, like, where do I start? And honestly, I think a lot of people want, a food plan, a menu with like a grocery list and tell me exactly what to eat and how much every day. And honestly, I'm not a huge fan of that. And the reason being is everyone is so different. And we're going to get into that in a minute here. But what I can tell you is that there are some parameters that do make up the quote perfect diet. And we're going to talk about that. So we have to start with real food, real, whole, nutrient dense foods. This is a non-negotiable foundation, guys. Okay. Non-negotiable. The baseline, the common ground across every truly health supportive eating pattern is it has to be real food. What do I mean by real food? Let me be very clear. I mean foods that look that it came from the earth or an animal, not a factory, right? So we think vegetables, fruit, eggs, meat, seafood, nuts, seeds, beans, roots, herbs, butter, olive oil, foods with ingredients you can pronounce, foods that ultimately your great grandmother would recognize. That is really big. And just as important is what we leave out of the perfect diet. And this will probably be no shock to you, but that is ultra processed foods. Excuse me. These are convenience foods and snacks that, dominate our modern food landscape. It's essentially the whole middle part of the grocery store. Things like chips, cookies, sodas, breakfast cereals, box meals, artificial sweeteners, protein bars, flavored yogurts, refined grains, packaged low-fat or sugar-free anything. Even if it says gluten-free, if it's coming in a package, it's probably ultra processed. And these things we have to get out of our diet. These foods are often marketed as healthy or weight loss friendly. But if you've listened for a while, hopefully you now understand that these convenient foods and snacks are engineered to keep you coming back for more. What they do is they disrupt your satiety hormones. They mess with your blood sugar. They hijack your dopamine system, which again makes you want to go back and have more. They're often loaded with low quality seed oils like canola oil, soybean oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, sunflower oil, you get it. And what these do is they increase inflammation and oxidative stress. If you are like, oh, I don't know about the seed oil thing, go listen to my podcast on omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids, and it will make a lot of sense to you. And also, I would encourage you to do a little research into like where did seed oils come from and then how are they made. It's very interesting, and they definitely fall under the like ultra processed food category because like you think about corn, like corn on the cob, like how do you think that becomes an oil? Like I could see how avocado or olives, they're naturally very oily and like wet, but corn is not. So anyway, that's again, this could be, yeah, I could do a whole thing just on that whole podcast episode, and I've done it on part of that on the omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids. Anyway, back to our main point. Instead of building our meals, based on these ultra processed food, we want to build them around 5 core elements. This is the perfect diet is built around 5 core elements, and the setup of like how much of each of these elements is really going to depend on you. Okay. But first, there has to be protein. Okay, real whole protein. This is critical for muscle, satiety, and hormone health. There has to be healthy fats for brain function. Healthy fats are super important for hormone production, for long-term energy. Fiber, because what that does is it feeds your gut microbiome and it regulates your digestion. And antioxidants. So what these do is they help protect your cells and reduce inflammation. From all the, garbage that comes into our body through chemicals, plastics, pesticides, insecticides, all that stuff. And then lastly is omega-3s to support your mood, your metabolism, your cardiovascular health, and your cell membranes. Because the outside of your cells, the cell membrane is actually made of omega-3 fatty acids. So if you want your cells to be able to communicate well, you need to have those omega-3s. You don't need to be perfect, but you really need to be intentional to choose foods that nourish you, that stabilize your energy, and then that give you life instead of robbing it from you, which is ultimately what I believe ultra-processed food does. So step 2, you got to eat real food. Okay, I hope if you take anything away from that, real food, and it needs to be some combination of those 5 pillars: protein, healthy fat, fiber, antioxidants, and omega-3s. Based on you, it's going to look different. And let's talk about that. So step 3 of the perfect diet is bioindividuality. And I really want to go a little bit deeper on this because this is where I think a lot of people start to get messed up and they start to get really frustrated and they don't know exactly what to do. So because this is where most diet plans miss the mark, they forget that we're all different, right? We're all bio-individual. Your body is not a machine. It's a living, breathing, adaptive system that responds to your environment. That includes your food, your sleep, your movement, your thoughts, your stress levels, and your unique biology, right? Maybe your body doesn't tolerate dairy well. I'm sure a few of you listening, probably this is you. Maybe your gut lining is compromised from years of having to use antibiotics or stress, right? That's going to play a huge role if you have leaky gut. Maybe you have an autoimmune condition. Maybe you have Hashimoto's or PCOS or insulin resistance. Maybe you have a sluggish gallbladder and you can't tolerate high-fat foods very well. They cause a lot of issues for you. Or, maybe you're an athlete and you're recovering from burnout, or maybe it's something that's not that it's simple, but you're breastfeeding, right? All of these things matter. They really matter. And this is why someone else's perfect diet might leave you feeling bloated, anxious, foggy, fatigued, because they don't have your same story, right? They don't have your same biology. They don't have your same gut microbiome. You have to take your personal health context seriously. If you're constantly tired, constipated, craving sugar, or can't lose weight no matter what you do, because your body is trying to tell you something. And the answer is not to double down on willpower. I will tell you that. I think that's a lot of times what we end up doing. We're like, oh, well, we're just not trying hard enough. Like, we're not doing it good enough. We need more willpower. the answer is not to double down on willpower. It's to get curious, right? And this is where a tailored approach comes in, and you need to factor these things in. So things like gut integrity, hormone balance, blood sugar regulation, inflammation status, stress load and sleep quality, nutrient deficiencies, your activity level, and body composition goals, right? So, because all of these things play a huge role, and these variables can all impact what foods will support or even potentially sabotage you. So, you don't need a trendy diet. What you need is your diet, right? And the one that works for your body. And in Lifestyle School, we talk a lot about working with your body and not against it. This is something I really try to push for my clients because I think it's so easy just to think, we're not doing what has worked for us in the past well enough, and that's why it's not working. And this puts us into my next point, and that is your needs are going to change over time, likely, for your food. Okay. So I think I'm just going to go through the steps. Is first, we have to recognize the perfect diet doesn't exist. We got to start with real food. We have to embrace our bio-individuality, right? Like what other factors play into what I do or do not need at this moment. And then step number 4 is realizing that our needs will change over time. So this is also, connected with the bio-individuality piece, but here's a truth that I wish more people knew is that the perfect for you diet will likely not stay the same forever. Okay, that perfect for you diet will likely change over time. And that is because your body is dynamic and your needs will change based on the season of life. What worked, for you in your 20s probably won't work for you in your 40s. And what worked when you were super active might not work when you're managing stress and sleep deprivation. What worked when you were pregnant or breastfeeding is different than what your body needs in perimenopause. And this is normal, okay? This is normal. And this is something that we need to embrace. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. In fact, one of the most mature things you can do on your health journey is to stop chasing the plan that, used to work and start asking, what does my body need now? So, maybe that means working with a coach to help you navigate this. Maybe it means getting some testing done. But we have to be curious, right? Curiosity is such a gift to ourselves. This might be, you need to increase your carbs for hormonal balance. And I know as someone who's like, I'm pretty pro low carb for the most part. Maybe I would say I'm just like more pro real whole foods. Because I think a lot of times when we think about carbs, it's like sugar laden ultra processed food, or like really refined grains. But, this might mean cutting back on fasting while you heal your adrenals. Maybe you feel shocked to hear me say that. This might mean adding protein to support muscle retention as you age. It could mean experimenting with fermented foods or cutting out gluten from your diet to address inflammation. What matters is that you stay flexible, be willing to pivot. Don't keep banging your head against the wall because something that used to work no longer does. I am such, this is me. I have banged my head against the wall so many times. Before I was like, why am I doing this? This doesn't make any sense. It's not working. It's not serving me. And I'm just getting frustrated and really discouraged. I want you to know that adaptability is like an incredible superpower. I wish I was a little bit more adaptable. It's something I'm working on every day. And it's often the missing link when it comes to sustainable health. So I'm going to tell you guys 2 little stories related to this. Well, kind of related to everything. But your dietary needs will change over time. I think the perfect clinical example of this. So I worked in a functional medicine clinic for 8 years. I did the nutrition coaching there. I also ran a weight loss program there. I was lucky enough. The doctor I was working with is a chiropractor who'd done functional medicine additionally for over 40 years, also happened to be my dad. So I grew up with this as well, right? So Long story short, the first story I tell you is in 2014, I was 24 years old. I was having all sorts of problems. I couldn't lose weight. I had brain fog, really horrible. So I did a bunch of testing. I did blood work, but I also did food sensitivity testing. This was before I started working with my dad, not long before actually. And I just like wasn't feeling well. I was like, I'm 24. I should feel amazing, right? I did not. Um, so I did food sensitivity testing as part of my testing. I want to be clear, food sensitivity testing is different than allergy testing. Um, Different pathway that you look for. It's much more hard to nail these down. Usually food sensitivities are secondary to leaky gut. I'm going to leave it at that. So I got my test back and I had all of these foods that I was eating all the time on my list of like pretty severe to moderately severe inflammatory response happening when I was eating these foods. So the plan was for 6 months, I took these foods out of my diet. And the thing with food sensitivities that I think some people don't understand is you can be sensitive to like good, healthy foods, like broccoli. Some of the things that were on my list that I remember really significantly was beef and chicken. I could have probably told you that chicken wasn't sitting well with me. To this day, it doesn't really. I don't really we have a problem. We can't, I can't eat chicken that often. Anyways, but like, something like beef or whatever, like these are good, healthy whole foods. It's getting from good food sources. Anyway, I removed them from my diet for 6 months and then I went to go reintroduce them. After 6 months, I felt like a different person. I lost like a bunch of weight very easily. I had more energy. My brain was sharper than it had been in what had felt like years. And I was doing so much better across the board health wise. And I went to reintroduce beef and I felt great. And to this day, I have been eating beef since. Chicken, however, I tried to reintroduce it. I immediately was like, this is not sitting well with me. I was bloated, was having some digestion issues. So I kept it out for another month, reintroduced it. And I was able to eat it at that point without like an immediate response. But to this day, I can tell when I eat chicken too frequently, my body's like, better not. So the reason why I tell this story is there are foods, and I saw this doing food sensitivity with clients, testing with clients over then almost, the next decade, working at the clinic. Anytime anyone had one of these tests done, we'd sit down together and talk about it. Many people deal with food sensitivities secondary to leaky gut. And what this means is that you may be eating a food that's a great healthy food, something like kale. Maybe it's like onions or garlic or broccoli, or, beef, like myself. And that food may not be serving you at this time because it's causing bloating, like low grade inflammation, stuff like that. Taking something out of your diet for a time can allow your body to heal, and then you could possibly reintroduce it and continue to eat it, right? And so this is just a perfect example of how our nutritional needs change over time. When we work with people doing food sensitivity testing, usually like we take stuff out for about 3 to 6 months, depending how severe the reaction is, and then reintroduce it slowly to see how they feel. And for most people, they can reintroduce almost all the foods back in. These are real whole foods we're talking about. But for some people, some foods just generally don't sit well with them. And so they're keeping those out, right? So this is an example of bioindividuality, of being willing to change things for a time, right? On the other piece of that, when I was talking about your needs will change. When we moved out to California now 3 years ago, which is wild to think, my stress went from like very, like, I would say low, moderate to very high, based on a number of things just happening in life. And I would say, medical training with your spouse with 3 kids is pretty intense. But long story short, I kind of had like a crash and burn moment when we moved out to California, and my stress was really high, kind of to a point where it felt a little debilitating. And I, through that time, was like, I need to do my fasting. Like, I need to eat this way that I know works for me. But during that time, I couldn't do it. I couldn't even force myself to do it. What I actually needed to do, and eventually I realized this after like 6 to 9 months of banging my head against the wall, I was like, no, what I need to do is focus on one, figure out how I can like get my stress under control. And then two, I need to focus on recovery of my stress hormones and get my body built back up to where I can actually do the fasting and respond in a healthy way to it, and do that. So that required me really focusing on things like sleep and rest and my mental health, like doing therapy. So there's different phases and needs as we go through these different phases of life. Okay. And that's what I really want you to walk away with is everyone's journey is very dynamic. Like I told you, two very distinct stories from my life that were 8 years apart. And, my needs in those different seasons were very different, right? And so we have to be willing to change as the times change. And I think that is really hard sometimes, but it's super powerful if you can figure that out. And step number 5 for the perfect diet plan is just realizing at the end of the day, the perfect diet is the one that helps you feel your best. It helps you show up to your life. It helps you feel clear-headed, helps you feel strong. You shouldn't feel bloated or depleted. You should feel energized and mentally sharp, satisfied when you eat food and not obsessed about food all day. That means your satiety hormones are regulated. You should feel light in your body, not inflamed or puffy, which I know a ton of people deal with. You should have regularity, I should say, in your digestion. You shouldn't be constipated. You shouldn't be having diarrhea. You should be having a bowel movement 1 to 2 times a day. I know I haven't actually really talked about stool or poop on this podcast, but I feel like it's a conversation I have with people a lot in person and makes people a little uncomfortable when I initially bring it up. But it's actually your digestion and like your elimination, all of that is super important and a really important sign about how your digestion is doing. So that is something you should be in. Anyway, I'm getting on a tangent again, and then your blood sugar should be stable. You shouldn't be feeling like you're on the blood sugar roller coaster, and your mood should also reflect that. And listen, it's okay if that means letting go of certain foods, even if you love them, even if like they're quote unquote healthy. This is not restrictive. There's nothing restrictive about eating in a way that helps you thrive. That's not punishment. That is what I like to call self-respect. And this is something that I have struggled with, because I don't like restriction. Like I want to have options, but contrary to, I think, of what you hear a lot online in the health space of the 80-20 rule, everything in moderation, I want you to know that there's nothing restrictive about eating in a way that helps you thrive. And that is self-respect. And yes, this might look different in different seasons. And that's okay. And the goal isn't to find your right diet and stick to it forever. The goal is to build a relationship with food that honors your body's feedback, guys, and keeps you in alignment with your values and with your health. And that is the real perfect diet, the one that works for you, it works with you, and it changes with you. Okay? So to recap the 5 steps, number 1, you got to realize that the perfect diet doesn't exist, and you need to be careful about who you allow into your ear to preach at you about what is the perfect diet, okay? Step number 2 is it has to be based on real food. Again, that's protein, healthy fat, fiber, antioxidants, and omega-3s. You have to honor your own bio-individuality, right? So just because it works for a health coach or an influencer or even a doctor on social media, it may not work for you, and that's okay. Your needs are going to change over time, so you got to be adaptive and flexible, and you have to let how you feel be your guide, because you are the only one living your own experience in your body. And this is something I tell my clients all the time. Like, I'm not in your skin. I don't know exactly how you're feeling, but you do, and we have to pay attention to that, right? So no, there's no single perfect diet, but there is a way to eat that helps you feel better. Start with real food. Tune into your biology, let your diet evolve with your life, and use your energy, mood, and digestion as daily feedback loops. You have the wisdom. I want you to feel empowered here after this episode. You have the wisdom, you have the intuition, and now is the time to trust it, right? We got to set our phone down. We got to take our AirPods out of our ears, and we have to reconnect with ourselves and what our body's trying to tell us. With that, guys, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. I can't believe we're already 28 episodes into this podcast. If this episode brought you any clarity or maybe even just a sense of peace, would you do me a favor and share it with a friend? That is the best way for me to get the word out about this podcast. Also, as always, if you could give me a review, if you could give me 5 stars, I'd love that. Post about it on your social media. If you do that, hopefully you're not on social media though. And if you're ready to go deeper to really start building your personalized strategy when it comes to your nutrition and your lifestyle, feel free to go head over to hopeplatcoaching.com, my website. You have to put in www.hopeplatcoaching.com. Haven't fixed that yet. Check out Lifestyle School. It's my 8-week course that really dives into this on a deep level. And we kind of go through it all. Stress, sleep, food, exercise, you name it, we probably cover it. I also have an 8-week personalized coaching program that I can walk you through just how to do this in a way that works for you. So with that, guys, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And we will see you next time on the next episode of Lifestyle School.